Hello again, true crime fans. We've got another mysterious case to explore. The case of Lynn Hernan. In Wisconsin, USA, there is a small town with a population of around 15,000, located near Milwaukee. On October 3, 2018, the tranquility of this town was shattered when Jessy Kurczewski, the caregiver for Lynn Hernan, called 911. Jessy reported finding 62-year-old Lynn. There was no sign of life in her apartment, sitting in a reclined position amid a mess of scattered medications. Jessy informed the dispatcher that Lynn had been experiencing severe stomach pains for several months, which had been worsening over time. This pain may have led Lynn to take a lethal dose of medications. When emergency services arrived, the doctors confirmed Lynn Hernan's death, which was presumed to be due to poisoning. It was essential to perform all necessary tests, including toxicology, to determine the cause of Lynn's death. They took her to the forensic experts' table, where blood was drawn, tissue samples were examined. And an unusual finding was a very high level of tetrazolline A. While this substance is found in certain drugs, none of the tablets located around the body contained it. As it turns out, tetrazolline A is found in some eye drops sold without a prescription, which are used to relieve eye redness and inflammation. This is particularly useful for allergic reactions and mild eye fatigue, and a few drops are typically sufficient. While these eye drops are safe when applied to the eyes, they can be harmful and even dangerous if ingested, especially in large amounts. Ingesting a significant quantity can lead to serious consequences, including vomiting, internal bleeding, memory loss, and even death at high doses. This aligns with the nurse's description of the prolonged suffering from stomach pain experienced by Lynn. The medical examiner's court was alarmed by the unusual circumstances surrounding Lynn's death, as there are much less painful and quicker ways to die. At 62, she likely did not want to endure suffering for months before dying. It appeared that her pain was due to a gradual increase in tetrazolline A levels in her blood. Based on this, the expert suggested that she might have been murdered. After reviewing the autopsy report, detectives concurred and initiated a criminal investigation. Lynn Hernan had no children and had outlived all her relatives. The first person police contacted to gather details about her death, even before the toxicology report was complete, was her nurse, 39-year-old Jessy Kurczewski. Jessy had been caring for Lynn, who lived alone, for several years, and their relationship was described as friendly. Lynn saw Jessy not just as a nurse, but as a true confidant. About 5 years prior to the incident, Lynn struggled with both physical and mental health issues, including depression and chronic obstructive pulmonary disease. So she needed to be supervised, however, but no one in her family could help her. She dealt with several illnesses, but the most agonizing was her stomach pain. In the final months of her life, she could only consume soup due to intestinal problems. Jessy carefully overseen her diet and medication. Following the incident, Jessy was promptly called to the police station for questioning. Forensic experts were analyzing the body and gathering materials for a toxicology test. Initially, it seemed that police was simply obtaining information from Jessy. However, it quickly became clear that the situation was more complicated than it appeared. During the inquiry, both Jessy and her mother, Jennifer Flower, were present. Jessy's mother was worried because she believed her daughter might be in danger. She felt the detectives were overly focused on Jessy and might be trying to accuse her of murder. Ironically, her concerns only increased suspicion towards Jessy instead of alleviating it. The police tried to clarify with Jessy the cause that led to Lynn's tragic end. They questioned Jessy about why Lynn chose to end her life in such a dramatic manner. At this time, no one doubted Jessy's account. She genuinely believed Lynn had died by taking a lethal dose of drugs voluntarily. However, Jessy's behavior has made the police suspicious. Detectives were trying to determine if there were any underlying factors related to Lynn's death, such as a depressive state. They wondered if she had previously attempted to end her life and what could have caused the severe stomach pains she experienced. However, Jessy was unable to provide any answers. It appeared that she was not only grieving the loss of her employer but also withholding important information. Ultimately, Jessy was released due to a lack of evidence. The investigators were awaiting the official conclusions from a forensic expert following a toxicological examination. After the police became suspicious of Nurse Jennifer, they began to keep an eye on her mother, Jennifer. They interviewed Jennifer and learned that she had been a close friend of Lynn. She had helped her daughter, Jessy, secure a job with Lynn's home. Together, they provided care for Lynn, assisted Lynn in dealing with age-related issues, care, and providing everything else needed. However, Jennifer also raised suspicions among the police. At this time, the toxicology results appear to be particularly worrying. Given Lynn's age and health issues, it was unlikely that she had been ingesting eye drops orally for an extended period. Investigators needed to figure out how such a large quantity of the drug ended up in her system. Experts indicated that a lethal dose of the substance would require at least 4 bottles, while the results suggested Lynn had consumed at least 6 bottles, which should have led to severe stomach cramps and pain before her death. Shortly after Lynn's death, an unusual situation arose. Jessy and Jennifer purchased a new, large, and expensive television, even though their income was modest. Additionally, the police found the car that Lynn had given to her nurse, Jessy, to be suspicious. Investigators noted the peculiar behavior of Jessy and Jennifer, which increasingly suggested that Lynn's death was not voluntary. Typically, criminals attempt to cover up their actions and hide evidence to evade justice, but this situation appeared to be different. Besides, Jessy and Jennifer showed no signs of grief. Instead, they seemed to revel in the inheritance, which deepened the suspicions against them. The police began to suspect that Jessy might have orchestrated the murder. Jennifer did not have regular access to Lynn's apartment, but Jessy visited Lynn almost daily, allowing her easy access to Lynn's food and medicine. Jessy insisted that she truly loved Lynn and wanted to help Lynn. The two had become like family. However, the detectives suspected that Lynn had made a serious mistake by allowing someone who could potentially harm her into her life. The suspects, Jessy and Jennifer, stayed attentive to the investigation, frequently calling the police station to check on the case's progress. The detectives realized that Jessy and Jennifer weren't genuinely concerned about what had happened. Rather, they were worried about being found out. Their behavior indicated they were closely monitoring the investigation. More evidence of Jessy and Jennifer's involvement and a thorough investigation were necessary to ensure justice. Jessy and her mother noticed that the police had taken a greater interest in their activities. During each visit to the station, Jessy felt compelled to defend herself. She said had a close relationship with Lynn and they treated each other like family. Jessy argued that any suspicions against her were baseless, insisting it was just a coincidence that she was a nurse and always in close contact with Lynn. Being a nurse did not make her a killer, but the detectives relied on more than just assumptions. Initially, Jessy did not mention on the increased levels of tetrazzolina found in Lynn's blood. However, when she was cornered, she revealed that Lynn frequently used these eye drops and might have applied them without realizing it. Jessy attributed this to Lynn's cognitive issues, which sometimes caused her to lose control over her actions. However, the police quickly identified a key witness named Andrew Pooh. Although he was not related to Lynn, he described their relationship as close and friendly. Lynn had lived with Andrew's family, and he saw Lynn as his grandmother, she even helping him financially during his college years. Since she had no children, Lynn wanted to leave Andrew an inheritance, but he declined to avoid any suspicion of wanting money. Despite his refusal, Lynn insisted on naming him as her heir since she had no other beneficiaries. However, they never had the chance to finalize this arrangement. According to Andrew, Lynn had proposed leaving him an inheritance between $10,000 and $50,000. He frequently visited Lynn and knew Jessy, her nurse. Andrew suspects that Lynn's death may have been related to Jessy's fear of losing her inheritance, especially since she knew that Lynn intended to leave her fortune to Andrew. After Lynn passed away, Jessy unexpectedly inherited all of Lynn's property, which raised suspicions. Andrew approached Jessy hoping to receive part of the inheritance, but she claimed that Lynn had many debts and hadn't paid her bills for a long time. As a result, Jessy said most of the inheritance would go towards settling those debts. This led Andrew decided to consult lawyers to verify this information. After that, Jessy got in touch and arranged to meet with Andrew. She gave him documents that she proved Lynn's debt had been repaid. After settling all debts, Jessy said she had only $26,000 left and offered to share it with Andrew. However, when the police investigated, they discovered that these documents were fake, created using a computer program. It turned out Jessy hadn't paid anyone. This discovery led investigators to take a closer look at Lynn's financial situation. They quickly learned that during her time as a nurse, Jessy had conducted suspicious transactions involving Lynn's finances. She applied for a loan to the bank, the application was approved, and as a result the loan was disbursed. Even though the loans were in Lynn's name, Jessy was the one who actually used the funds. Ultimately, it was revealed that over the years, she had taken out about $300 in loans, of which only $88 was left by the time of the police investigation. In response to the financial claims made by the police officers, Jessy maintained that she acted at Lynn's request. She stated that Lynn provided the necessary documents for the loans and frequently asked her to purchase eye drops. Jessy mentioned that she had 4 bottles on hand, which Lynn had given her, and noted that she saw Lynn using the product correctly. She insisted that she did not supervise this process. However, police were skeptical of her account. At the crime scene, there were no eye drop bottles found near the body. Instead, pills were littered around, and no traces of those pills were found in Lynn's body. Lynn was said to have kept her bottle of eye drops on her nightstand, but a thorough search of the apartment revealed they were missing. The situation became increasingly complicated, suggesting that someone had staged the scene. It appeared that it had been discarded to hide evidence. The forensic expert believed that Lynn had been ingesting the eye drops for an extended period, leading to poisoning, severe pain, and ultimately death. It seemed unlikely that Lynn could have used such a large quantity on her own. This indicates that someone has poisoned her. Jessy, who spent the most time with Lynn and managed her diet and medications, emerged as the primary suspect. Suspicious thing, the detectives did not contact Jessy or summon her for questioning. Instead, she frequently visited the police station to ask about the investigation's progress. Jessy maintained that she had no motive to harm Lynn and denied any involvement in financial fraud. However, the circumstances surrounding the drugs continued to trouble the investigators, who began to apply pressure on Jessy. She shared bizarre stories about how Lynn supposedly enjoyed mixing vodka with eye drops, claiming this gave Lynn extra enjoyment from the drink. Jessy insisted she was unaware that regular eye drops could be dangerous and viewed it as just one of Lynn's eccentric habits. Jessy stated that on that fateful morning, she brought 4 additional bottles of eye drops to the Lynn's apartment and claimed that Lynn even mixed them into her water. This situation continued for about 6 months until a tragic conclusion, making the story increasingly bizarre. Despite the circumstantial evidence gathered by investigators, detectives believed Jessy was fabricating excuses. Ultimately, they decided to arrest Jessy on suspicion of premeditated murder. Evidence from the crime scene, including Jessy's cell phone, was sent for analysis, which provided the police with more information. They discovered that Jessy was in regular contact with her boyfriend, Scott Craig. The conversations between Jessy and Scott particularly caught the attention of police. It became evident that Jessy's assertion of being unaware of the dangers of ingesting eye drops was untrue. She had been researching this information online for some time. By the time she started caring for Lynn, she was already knowledgeable about products containing the harmful substance, suggesting she had intentionally chosen medications that contained it in high amounts. Jessy first considered using eye drops as a way to poison Lynn because they could be easily purchased without a prescription. All she needed to do was persuade Lynn to take them orally or secretly mix them into Lynn's food or drink. Due to Lynn's cognitive difficulty, so this seemed simple. From Jessy and Scott's conversations, it seemed he was unaware that Jessy was attempting to poison Lynn. However, a few months before the incident, a conversation revealed that Jessy had mentioned Lynn's serious illness, including episodes of vomiting blood, which led to Lynn being hospitalized. Doctors later reported that she had been poisoned. The investigation showed that Jessy must have known the consequences of her actions. The police looked into Scott's potential involvement and brought him in for questioning. He denied any knowledge of the poisoning plan but claimed that Jessy had informed him about Lynn's previous poisonings. Scott viewed Jessy as a pathological liar, and their relationship was close to ending. He thought Jessy fabricated the poisoning story to gain his sympathy and reconcile with him. During another conversation in September, Jessy claimed Lynn was hospitalized and on medication, stating that Lynn is in intensive care and is on life support machines. In reality, Lynn had already passed away. Scott was fed up with the relationship and wanted to end it that day. However, Jessy attempted to manipulate him again by claiming that Lynn was in the hospital, hoping to elicit his sympathy. She was trying to hold on to their relationship. The situation was complicated. Was it a fatal overdose or a carefully planned scheme to obtain an inheritance? It turns out there was a clear motive in Jessy's actions. Over time, motivation will reveal itself. It is possible that Lynn found out about this, leading to her murder. Jessy then took possession of Lynn's property and money. Additionally, Jessy was desperate to keep her relationship with Scott, who had mentioned breaking up multiple times. Jessy concealed the true state of Lynn's, creating a web of lies that made it hard to uncover the truth. Investigators found that Jessy refused to admit her guilt. She maintained that Lynn consumed 100 liters of vodka daily and added eye drops to it. In October 2023, the investigation revealed the full extent of Jessy's financial fraud. It was found that since 2016, Lynn's credit limit had increased from almost zero to $72,000. This was just the beginning. After her death, nearly $16,000 was stolen from her apartment, which was allegedly used to pay off some debts. Jessy claimed she only repaid loans that were in Lynn's name, but the source of these funds was traced. The total debts amounted to hundreds of thousands of dollars taken out from banks under Lynn's name. Additionally, items worth $155 were stolen from Lynn's home. Initially, these items were reported missing, but it was later discovered that Jessy started receiving money in her accounts shortly thereafter, likely from the sale of Lynn's possessions. Lynn was a wealthy single woman who rarely used credit cards or loans. Additionally, the sudden rapid increase in debt that shortly after she hiring a new nurse, Jessy, seemed suspicious. Reports indicated that Jessy visited the casino every month, gambling large amounts with her boyfriend Scott, who didn't question where the money was coming from. They often went to gambling establishments at least twice a month. The investigation revealed that Jessy had a prior criminal record. Despite being young, she had a significant history of offenses, including document forgery, fraud, and gambling. Since 2010, Jessy struggled with a severe gambling addiction. In February of that year, she defrauded 2 individuals out of $4,000 by taking out loans in their names. Although she didn't use fake documents, it was shown that she obtained these funds through deceitful methods. By April 2010, she had lost over $45,000. During this time, she borrowed an additional $2,500 and applied for a loan exceeding $6,000, falsely claiming that her mother, Jennifer, had approved it by using her mother's documents. This was, of course, a lie. Jessy managed to secure over $6,500 in credit using her mother's car as collateral, but she never repaid this amount. As a result, her mother nearly lost her car and had to gather a large amount of documentation to prove that she was not responsible for those loans. Jessy was imprisoned for 2 years but was released early due to good behavior. Her mother stated that she struggled with a severe gambling addiction. The prosecutor's office claimed that 25-year-old Jessy committed premeditated murder to gain financial benefits from her victim, Lynn. By doing so, she attempted to eliminate her own debts. It is alleged that she killed Lynn, who had endured pain and progressive for years, without considering the consequences. Jessy described the act as one of mercy, said that she could no longer bear to see Lynn suffer. The lawyers argued that Jessy did not kill Lynn. They explained that Lynn had cognitive impairments and did not understand the risks of type of eye drops she was taking. They stated that Lynn believed that drinking vodka mixed with eye drops would help her sleep better, leading her to use the drops without realizing the danger. According to the prosecution, on the day of the murder, Jessy provided Lynn with water that contained the contents of 6 eye drop bottles. However, the lethal dose was only 1 bottle. In court, both Jessy and Jennifer testified that Lynn consumed the water with the 6 bottles of drops. Initially, Jessy, who was a nurse, advised Lynn against using the drops, but after a lengthy argument, Jessy eventually relented, unaware of the severe outcomes that could result. Afterward, Jessy left for a few hours on business, not knowing how much of the substance Lynn had actually consumed or how it would affect her. Especially since Lynn had previously been hospitalized for poisoning from the drops. Lynn was aware of the dangers associated with eye drops, which made the idea of her accidental poisoning implausible. Jessy also knew about the harmful effects of these substances, and a key point against her was that no bottles of the eye drops were found near Lynn's body. It was evident that someone assisted Lynn in taking the medicine. The trial was intense and emotional, with the judge actively engaging in discussions. On November 14, 2023, the jury convicted Jessy of first-degree murder, theft, and concealment of evidence. Upon hearing the verdict, Jessy broke down in tears. She was sentenced to life in prison but could be eligible for parole after 40 years. Hey detectives! Welcome back. We've got another mysterious case to explore. The case of Emily Longley. Emily Longley was born in England in 1994 to parents Mark and Caroline Longley. 2 years later, she welcomed her younger sister, Hannah. The sisters enjoyed a close relationship while growing up in a loving family. When Emily was 9 and Hannah was 7, the family relocated to Auckland, New Zealand. Unfortunately, after Emily began associating with the wrong crowd, her parents chose to send her back to the UK to live with her grandparents and start anew. In 2010, Emily traveled to England to study at Brockenhurst College. Her goal was to earn a business degree, and she aspired to be a model. While in England, she stayed at her grandparents' house in Bournemouth, a popular resort town located on the coast of the English Channel, near Poole. At the time of her move, Emily's sister Hannah was still in school. Their parents, Mark and Caroline, had divorced but continued to have a friendly relationship. Emily was a beautiful young woman who drew a lot of attention. One day, she met 20-year-old Elliot Turner, and he left a lasting impression on her. Over time, their communication developed into a romantic relationship. In April 2011, Emily traveled back to New Zealand to visit her family, whom she hadn't seen in 6 months. Her father greeted her at the airport, and she rushed to him, hugging him tightly and expressing how much she missed him. Emily shared that she had a very close bond with her father, who adored her and missed her smile, laughter, and playful jokes. The next day, the entire family visited Emily's favorite pizzeria. She shared with her parents that, in addition to her college studies, she was involved in modeling and had made some amazing friends. She also talked about her boyfriend, 20-year-old Elliot. Although they had only been dating for a few months, Emily felt she was too young for a serious relationship. "I think I'm going to break up with him when I return," she said. Over the following weeks, Emily enjoyed spending time with friends and family, creating great memories. No one realized that they would soon lose her. When Emily's flight began boarding, she found it difficult to say goodbye to her family. She promised them she would return in 5 months. During that time, she was excited to watch the Rugby World Cup starting on September 9th. A few days later, while texting her father, Emily mentioned that she had broken up with Elliot, but she chose not to share specific details. Elliot had been acting oddly after seeing photos Emily posted on social media from New Zealand, particularly because there were other guys in the pictures, which made him very jealous. Elliot Turner, a 20-year-old from a wealthy jewelry family, appeared to live a carefree life. He was well known in the bar and club scenes of Bournemouth and Poole and was part of a group of affluent young men known as the Firm. His friends nicknamed him All Talk Turner due to his tendency to brag. In December 2010, he met Emily, and they enjoyed a lavish lifestyle together, often staying out late. However, Elliot, who had a history of being obsessed with women, quickly became jealous, leading to frequent violent arguments in their relationship. People described him as threatening, aggressive, controlling, and possessive. In January 2008, when Elliot was 16 years old, the police sent him a warning letter about harassment. They advised him not to contact his ex-girlfriend after he inundated her with text messages and emails following their breakup. Elliot enjoyed being the center of attention and did not have to work since his parents financially supported him. He was skilled at manipulating others, including his parents, and his life centered on parties, women, alcohol, and drugs. He believed he was capable of doing anything he desired. Elliot always carries a hammer with him to intimidate anyone who might challenge him. His friends thought Elliot fancied himself a gangster. Elliot would often buy drinks for everyone at the bar. Elliot liked to brag about owning a new Mini Cooper, but it was actually a gift from his grandmother. He attempted to maintain his tough guy persona by posting streetwise messages on social media, where he often called himself Scarface or God. Although he attracted a lot of female attention, he became very attached to Emily when he met her. She praised his image as a successful person, something he worked hard to achieve. As their relationship progressed, Elliot began to display increasingly controlling behavior. He even threatened Emily, saying he would take her life. Emily wrote an emotional note to Elliot expressing her feelings. 1. I love you. 2. Please don't say you'll kill me. 3. Stop bringing up your ex-girlfriends. 4. Stop being so aggressive. Relax a bit, because that is much more attractive, and you scare me because you're so intimidating. As Elliot revealed his true nature and his controlling behavior escalated to an unacceptable level, Emily understood that he was not the right person for her. Then she decided to break up with him. Unfortunately, individuals like Elliot often cannot accept rejection. On the evening of May 6, 2011, Emily was out with friends at an entertainment venue. Surveillance footage showed her arriving at the nightclub with them. In another development, Elliot checked Emily's Facebook messages and found out she was seeing another man, which made him extremely angry. He went to the club and confronted Emily, leading to an argument. The situation escalated when Emily threw her drink at him. Elliot reacted by verbally abusing her and making threats of violence. He disapproved of Emily's outfit, claiming it was too revealing, and ignored the fact that they had broken up. Unwilling to accept the breakup, he continued to follow her after she decided to leave. His friends heard him say that he would kill her, that he would go to prison for it and still be a millionaire, and that serving 10 years in prison wouldn't bother him. Elliot convinced Emily to come to his house, saying he wanted to talk more relaxed. Elliot lived with his parents, which may have made Emily feel more at ease, thinking he would behave better around them. Neighbors observed them entering the house. The next morning, Anita Turner, Elliot's mother, called emergency services, reporting that Emily was unresponsive. The ambulance arrived around 9 a.m. Anita followed the nurse's instructions to help Emily, but unfortunately, when the paramedics arrived, they could only confirm Emily Longley had died. Anita, an Indonesian citizen, moved to the UK to marry Lee Turner. When they had a son, they gave him everything he wanted, which turned out to be a serious mistake. During a call with emergency services, Anita seemed surprisingly calm for a mother who had just discovered her son's girlfriend dead. Her demeanor was unsettlingly normal. Meanwhile, in New Zealand, Emily's father, Mark, woke up at 2 a.m. to find numerous missed calls from his ex-wife Caroline and their younger daughter Hannah. He also had a voicemail from Hannah, but she was talking something that difficult to understand. Then he heard Caroline screaming in the background, saying, "Emily is dead." Mark was in disbelief. He immediately called his mother in England. When she answered, his world shattered. She was crying uncontrollably. Soon after, a police officer took the phone and said, "I'm sorry to inform you that your daughter Emily is dead." Mark was stunned. Just a week ago, Emily had been on his couch, smiling. As he flew to the UK, the grieving father struggled to accept that his daughter was truly gone. Sadly, it was no dream. The loss of their eldest daughter was an immense heartbreak for Emily's parents. The police informed them that Emily had passed away in her sleep, which didn't make sense to them since she was so young and healthy. While the police gathered some evidence, the circumstances surrounding Emily's death remained unclear, and they would have to wait for the autopsy results. Elliot Turner's parents, Anita and Lee, told investigators that they had been at home all night and had not heard anything unusual. Meanwhile, Elliot shared his sorrow for Emily on social media by posting photos of them together. The police found no solid evidence to contradict the Turners' claim that Emily had mysteriously died in her sleep. In any death investigation, the crucial task is to determine the cause of death. Identifying the cause helps investigators understand the situation and how to approach the investigation. While they awaited the autopsy results, investigators discovered that a few days before her death, Emily had posted a concerning message on her Facebook page, stating that she had a stalker. Emily detailed in phone calls she received, saying that someone had called her, and when she had asked who it was, they replied that she didn't know them, but they knew everything about her. She had asked how they got her number, and they said they would tell her when they saw her, while persistently asking her out. Emily had hung up, but they kept calling. She made this post on Thursday, May 5th. The police discovered that before her death, Emily had a heated argument with Elliot in front of other patrons at the nightclub. Interrogation with Elliot's friends revealed that he attempted to control Emily's actions and had learned about her meeting with another man. Most alarmingly, they mentioned that Elliot had threatened her life multiple times. However, his friends dismissed these threats, believing they were merely bravado to enhance his gangster image. The autopsy did not determine a definitive cause of death, but experts suggested that strangulation might have occurred, noting that the physical evidence was consistent with pressure applied to the neck. The investigators suspected that a member of the Turner family might be involved in Emily's death, which prompted them to install listening devices in their home. The police aimed to uncover any hidden information, and their suspicions were confirmed. One recording revealed that Elliot was advising his mother on how to interact with the police and what she should say. Lee Turner, Elliot's father, seemed to be the only one aware of the wrongdoing in their actions, but he eventually succumbed to the demands of his son and wife. While reviewing the recordings, investigators discovered details about Emily Longley's death. Elliot Turner confessed to causing her death, leading to his arrest a week later. Although he denied his guilt, his lawyers attempted to dispute the validity of the audio recordings. After thoroughly examining the case, the judge permitted the prosecution to present the recordings as evidence. Unaware that the police were listening, Elliot revealed that he felt angry every day and that Emily had upset him more than anyone else ever had. During the trial in May 2012, Elliot's lawyer argued that he acted in self-defense. Turner explained that a fight in his bedroom escalated, leading him to grab Emily by the neck. He insisted that he did not strangle her and claimed he discovered her dead in his bed the next morning. On the second day of the trial, Elliot expressed his disgust with his actions that night. It was reported that after finding Emily dead, he wrote a letter to his mother expressing his shame and mentioning that he was planning to leave for Spain. This suggests that Elliot intended to leave the country on the day Emily died but ultimately changed his mind for some unknown reason. When the police arrived at his house after receiving a call, they found packed bags, and Elliot had his passport in his pocket. In court, he admitted that he had threatened Emily and felt upset and deceived the night before her death after seeing emails on her phone. He claimed he had forcefully pushed her face into a table and recounted the fight they had before her death, stating that Emily began hitting him with her hands and feet. He attempted to calm her down but eventually gave up. When asked if he planned to kill Emily, Elliot said no. He claimed he thought Emily was asleep and only realized she was dead when she didn't wake up the next morning. In an interview with the Herald newspaper, Emily's father, Mark, expressed the pain of losing his daughter. The reality of death is that it's incredibly difficult. It doesn't matter if it's your child, partner, or even your 99-year-old grandmother, it's painful when someone is here one day and gone the next. This is something we struggle to cope with. All anniversaries are tough, birthdays are tough, Christmas is tough, and Easter is especially hard because that was the last time I truly spent time with her, Mark Longley shared. He shared that the hardest part is knowing he will never see the woman she could have been. I miss watching the life she was denied develop. We had a small but beautiful glimpse of the woman she was becoming, and I felt so proud of her. As her father, I'm naturally biased, but the world truly was a better and more enjoyable place with her in it. During the trial, Elliot Turner was depicted as a privileged young man whose parents tried to protect him from facing consequences. The court revealed that he had free access to his family's home in the wealthy Queen's Park neighborhood of Bournemouth. There, he hosted wild parties for his middle-class friends, as described by his father, Lee. To ensure he didn't bother them, his parents allowed him to use a converted garage as his own living space, giving him the freedom to come and go as he pleased. It was in this room, equipped with a mini bar, that he strangled Emily while they were on his bed. The jury quickly dispelled any illusions Elliot had when they found him guilty on May 22, 2012. The court sentenced him to life in prison, with a minimum term of 16 years. While delivering the verdict, Mrs. Justice Dost described Elliot as arrogant, stating, "Emily was a lovely girl who brought joy to others. You extinguished that light. You didn't love her, she was a trophy to you. The relationship was about your control through aggression and threats. Focus on your life sentence instead of luxury." She also sentenced Elliot to 9 months for perverting justice, to run concurrently. Elliot Turner wasn't the only one involved in the trial. His parents, Anita and Lee, were also implicated. They loved their son and tried to protect him after he committed his crime. Lee destroyed a letter in which Elliot confessed, while Anita removed a jacket from the room where the letter was supposedly found. Additionally, Anita delayed calling for an ambulance, allowing Elliot time to hide evidence and let the family create a credible story for the police. When questioned about her decision to postpone the call, Anita stated that she didn't believe Emily was dead. During cross-examination, they asked her if she believed Emily had ruined her son's life. After a 6-second pause, she answered, no. In the recording, Lee inquired whether they had made the right decision. Anita responded, "We've done the right thing." Both Anita Turner, 51, and Lee Turner, 54, were found guilty of obstructing justice and received sentences of 27 months in prison. In 2013, after serving half of their sentence, they continue to live in the house where Emily tragically died. Emily's father, Mark, broke down while discussing the verdicts. With support from his ex-wife Caroline and daughter Hannah, he expressed, "What we have heard over these 5 weeks has shocked and disgusted us. It is beyond belief that a man as evil as Elliot could treat such a gentle and loving girl like Emily so violently. We are incredibly proud that she came all the way across the world to seek a better life for herself. Unfortunately, this is the life that Elliot chose to take from her." Mark mentioned that there was much discussion about Elliot's bragging, and no one took his threat seriously until it was too late. He noted that even his mother dismissed it when he texted her about his intention to harm Emily. In October 2020, reports emerged that Elliot Turner's cellmates had assaulted him in prison. This incident followed his decision to display photos of Emily in his cell and brag about receiving letters from female admirers. The attack was triggered after he claimed he would soon go back to his luxurious lifestyle filled with champagne, Bentleys, and attractive women. In 5 years, Elliot Turner will be eligible to apply for early release. We can only hope that the parole board will act wisely and make the right choice concerning someone who has shown no remorse for his actions. Welcome back, detectives. Let's dive into another horrible case. The case of Heather Elvis. Heather Rachelle Elvis was born on June 30, 1993, in Horry County, South Carolina, to Terry and Debbie Elvis. She was described as a determined, free-spirited, and vibrant individual with a large, outgoing personality. Heather had a passion for makeup and aspired to pursue it as a career. A talented, cheerful 20-year-old girl, she actively shares her thoughts and interests on social networks. Heather is known to be somewhat rebellious, living life her own way without regard for other people's opinions. After graduating from St. James High School in Maules Inlet in 2011, eager to experience her independence, Heather's parents allowed her to move into an apartment in Myrtle Beach with her best friend Brianna. To make ends meet while studying cosmetology, Heather had 2 part-time jobs, one at the House of Blues in North Myrtle Beach and another at a Scottish-themed restaurant called the Tilted Kiln in Myrtle Beach. She had a good job, great friends, a very close-knit family, and everything in her life seemed to be in order. However, she had secrets her family didn't know about and wouldn't discover until it was too late. On a warm summer afternoon in 2013, while Heather was working her usual shift at the Tilted Oven, she caught the attention of an older man, who was the maintenance worker, Sidney Moore. Sidney was a 37-year-old man, married with 3 kids. His wife, Tammy, was a 40-year-old stay-at-home mom who worked part-time as a travel agent, and they had been married since 1997. Sidney had his own maintenance business and would often come in to repair things in the restaurant's kitchen. Heather had a crush on Sidney, even though he's much older than her, and the two have had some innocent flirtations at work. Heather would confide in her friend Brianna about the things he would say to her and how smitten she was with him. Heather was deeply in love with Sydney. She confided in her sister about their strong feelings for each other and their plans for a future together. Heather was aware that Sydney had a wife, but he told her their marriage was open and that he no longer loved his wife, Tammy. Sydney even claimed Tammy had a boyfriend and they were staying together only for financial reasons and their children. As a young and naive person, Heather believed everything Sydney told her. Her friends did not approve of her relationship because he was 17 years older than Heather. In addition, Sydney had been married for 15 years to his 40-year-old wife. The affair was no secret at Heather's workplace, and she often faced ridicule from her colleagues. The situation reached the point where some colleagues wrote on a mirror at work, "Stealing a married man, that's fine, thanks." Even one of the girls called the restaurant pretending to be Tammy, looking for Heather. This scared Heather and she left work immediately, thinking that Tammy might show up at any moment. They said their relationship continued until September 2013, when Heather tweeted that once upon a time, an angel and a devil fell in love, but it did not end well, referring to her relationship with Sydney. Tammy, Sydney's wife, eventually discovered the affair, though it remains unclear how. According to people close to Heather, once Tammy learned of the affair, it caused a major upheaval. After discovering her husband's infidelity with Heather, Tammy called Heather and demanded that she end the relationship. Tammy then put Sydney on the phone, and he told Heather that she meant nothing to him, that it was over, and he insulted her in a way that severely impacted Heather's confidence and self-worth. In the following weeks, she tried to focus on rebuilding herself and directing her attention to her goals and work. However, Tammy was just getting started. Tammy forced Sydney to tattoo her name above her pubic area. She also handcuffed him to the bed at night so he couldn't escape. In the coming weeks, Tammy continued to send Heather rude messages, even calling Heather as many as 40 times a day. Heather believed that mocking Tammy was the best way to handle the situation, saying that Tammy should be worried about her husband instead of sending her messages. Tammy then followed up by sending a photo of herself and Sydney together in bed. Heather responded a few days later, on November 1st, saying that she thought Tammy was obsessed with her and that she no longer needed to worry about Tammy. On November 5th, Tammy replied that Sydney no longer had a phone, referring to Sydney's lack of a phone, which prevented him from communicating with her. Tammy also tries to get Heather fired from Tilted Kilt, calling the restaurant every day and telling them that Sydney won't fix things anymore as long as Heather works there. Heather informed Sydney that she wanted Tammy to stop calling the restaurant, as Tammy's frequent calls had caused Heather to lose hours of work and be sent home. Heather and Sydney last saw each other on November 5th after they had agreed to end their relationship. After suffering a broken heart, Heather remained determined to move forward. Those around her noticed how she had regained her smile. Things started looking up when she was offered a job at a beauty salon, bringing her closer to her professional dream. As for Tammy's messages and calls, Heather got used to ignoring them, hoping that eventually Tammy would get bored and leave her alone. On November 19th, Sydney and Tammy purchased a brand new black Ford F-150 and drove to California with their children to visit Disneyland as a way to rekindle their romance. The trip lasted for 3 weeks. Meanwhile, despite Heather's life taking a turn for the better, those around her soon started to notice that she was gaining weight. This was evident to the extent that she had to be given a new, larger uniform at work, as her usual one no longer fit. Specifically, Heather went from wearing a size A cup bra to a size C cup, and from a medium-sized skirt to a large. These changes are typically associated with pregnancy. Heather took a pregnancy test at work, but the results were inconclusive. While it was widely believed that Heather was pregnant, given the changes in her physical appearance and her intimate relationship with Sydney, the exact status of her pregnancy was uncertain. Despite this, Heather's confidence was returning, and she had arranged a date with a man closer to her age, with whom she had been conversing for some time. The situation seemed promising for Heather. It was December 17, 2013, when Heather headed out for her date. They didn't have any specific plans and were eager to get to know each other better. They went out for dinner and then drove around to check out the Christmas lights, which was one of Heather's favorite holiday activities. Later, Heather's date, Stephen Caldy, took her to the mall, where he taught her how to drive a car with a manual transmission. He also took a photo of her while she was trying to drive his car. Heather sent this photo, which showed her having fun on her date, to her best friend Brianna, who she lived with, as well as to her father Terry. According to the information provided, Heather Elvis and her date began around 10 p.m. and ended shortly after 1 a.m. After dropping Heather off at her apartment, they had plans to meet again the next day. Unfortunately, this would be the last time Heather's presence was confirmed. A little over half an hour after returning to her apartment, Heather received an unexpected call from Sydney. During the 4-minute call from a payphone, Sydney apologized to Heather and expressed his love for her. He even confessed that he had left Tammy in the hopes of being with her. At 1:44 a.m., Heather contacted her roommate Brianna, who was visiting relatives out of town. In tears, Heather told Brianna that Sydney had called to confess his love for her. Brianna advised Heather to thoughtfully evaluate the situation, not jeopardize her recent relationship with Stephen. Heather said she would think about it and then sleep, but she couldn't sleep that night. At around 2:29 a.m., Heather tried calling the number that Sydney had previously called several times, but there was no answer. At around 3:16 a.m., she attempted to call Sydney's mobile phone, but again there was no answer. Unwilling to give up, Heather called Sydney's mobile phone once more, and this time, the call lasted just over 4 minutes. The content of this phone conversation is unknown. After the call, Heather got into her car and drove to a place called Peachtree Boat Landing, which is located approximately 3 miles from the house of Sydney and Tammy. At 3:38 a.m., Heather arrived at the Peachtree dock. She tried to contact Sydney's phone again, but got no response. She made follow-up calls at 3:39 a.m., 3:41 a.m., and 3:46 a.m., but Sydney still didn't answer. While Heather was trying to meet Sydney, 2 security cameras captured a black Ford F-150 pickup, similar to the one owned by Sydney and Tammy, heading from the direction of their house towards the dock. The following day, a local police officer patrolling the area found Heather's car, a green Dodge Intrepid, parked at Peachtree Landing, on the banks of the Waccamaw River. After verifying the license plate and discovering that the vehicle was registered to Heather's father, Terry Elvis, the officers went to Heather's parents' house. They questioned Terry about the car, and since he had a spare set of keys, they went to the vehicle and noticed that Heather's keys, identification, purse, and phone were not inside. The police allowed Terry to search the vehicle and then let him take it home. Terry repeatedly tried to call Heather, but the calls went straight to voicemail. When Heather failed to show up for work, the police investigated her apartment but found no sign of her. A search for the missing Heather was initiated, and her friends and family created posters, leaflets, and a Facebook page titled "Find Heather Elvis" to aid the search. As the police investigated, suspicion soon focused on Sydney and Tammy due to evidence of text messages, phone calls, and public knowledge of the affair between Heather and Sydney. Sydney and Tammy also posted on Facebook, speaking disrespectfully of Heather and her family. Sydney referred to Heather as a girl who traded fellatio for pumpkin-spiced lattes, and Tammy posted a lengthy status about how Sydney cheated on her in September and October. Detectives gathered evidence suggesting Sydney's involvement in the case. They observed his pickup leaving the Peachtree Landing area at 3:45 a.m. and found that he had disconnected the vehicle's GPS system on the night of December 18, making it difficult to confirm if the CCTV footage showed his vehicle. Despite the lack of concrete evidence, the investigation continued. On February 21, 2014, Sydney and Tammy were arrested and charged with kidnapping, obstruction of justice, and 2 charges of indecent exposure. After an 11-hour search, they were charged with indecent exposure for taking sexually explicit pictures of themselves in public areas, as well as obstruction of justice for providing false information to the police regarding a pay phone. On February 24, 2014, the police held a press conference to announce that they had charged Sydney and Tammy with the murder of Heather. The police claimed to have found evidence that led them to suspect that Sydney and Tammy had kidnapped and murdered Heather. In 2015, Sydney and Tammy were released from prison after 11 months, and their bond was set at $100,000 per person. During the bond hearing, prosecutors stated that there was no direct link between Sydney and Tammy and Heather's disappearance. The Sydney family claimed that they were threatened by the Elvis family, which led them to install a tracking system and advised them to avoid the Elvis family, including on social media. The murder charges were dismissed without prejudice in March 2016, which means the prosecution could choose to charge them with murder again if they wished to do so. The kidnapping charges were also reduced to pending, and the charges of indecent exposure against both of them were dropped. On June 20, 2016, Sydney's trial for the kidnapping of Heather began, and it was revealed in court that Heather was possibly pregnant. Detectives discovered that when Sydney went to Walmart, he purchased a pregnancy test and cigars. Afterward, Sydney went to a pay phone to call Heather and then to meet up with her. Sydney explained that the pregnancy test was for his wife Tammy because they were trying to have a child, even though the home security footage of Sydney's residence showed them washing their car after December 18, burning rags, and having a receipt for a pregnancy test in their possession. Sydney was charged with kidnapping, but the first trial resulted in a mistrial because the jury could not reach a verdict. Despite the lack of embodying evidence that Sydney murdered Heather, 10 of the 12 jurors wanted to convict him, while the remaining 2 did not. In 2017, the Court of Appeals affirmed Sydney's conviction for kidnapping and attempted kidnapping of Heather and sentenced him to 30 years in prison. In October 2018, 5 years after Heather went missing, Tammy was put on trial for kidnapping and conspiracy. During the trial, it was revealed that Tammy was infuriated by her husband's affair with Heather, especially after rumors began to circulate that Heather was pregnant in December 2013. In addition, a family friend of the Sydney, named Donald DeMarino, testified that he saw an image of Heather on Tammy's phone during a family gathering that took place after Heather's disappearance. Donald mentioned that in the image, it appeared that Heather was unable to walk or speak. Allegedly, the image disturbed him so much that he withdrew from the meeting after seeing it. The image in question was not shown, nor were any further details provided. However, this testimony, along with all the other evidence presented by the prosecution, was sufficient to convince the jury to reach a guilty verdict in just under 2 hours. She was found guilty and sentenced to 30 years in prison on both charges, and was eligible for parole after serving a specific amount of time. To this day, what happened to Heather Elvis that night in December 2013 has not been revealed. Both Sydney and Tammy have tried to appeal their convictions for years, insisting on their innocence, but without success. Currently, Sydney is incarcerated at the Lee Correctional Institution Maximum Security in Bishopville, with a projected release date of March 31, 2044. On the other hand, Tammy is in the Letcher Medium Security Correctional Center in Greenwood, with a projected release date of May 9, 2043. To this day, no trace of Heather Elvis has been found. A memorial garden was installed at Peachtree Boat Landing in her honor. Heather's disappearance has left an indelible void in the lives of her family and friends. The pain they have endured, the unanswered questions, and the longing for a resolution have become an enduring chapter in the history of Myrtle Beach. The Myrtle Beach community, united by the hope of obtaining answers, has come together in search efforts and vigils. Heather's story has echoed far beyond this coastal town, reflecting the challenges of navigating the complexities of love and relationships. Hello again, true crime fans. We've got another mysterious case to explore. The case of Mackenzie Sherilla. Mackenzie Sherilla was born in August 2004 in Strongsville, Ohio. The youngest of 3 children, Mackenzie received a lot of love and pampering from her parents, John Sherilla and Natalie Stevens. Her parents prioritized her education and encouraged she to pursue every goal she loved. Being the youngest also gave her a tolerance. She was often forgiven for many of her mischievous pranks during her childhood, and even when she committed some more serious mistakes, she would still be forgiven by her parents. Mackenzie grew up as a spoiled and entitled girl who often got her way. Her parents gave in to her demands, which led her to believe she could act however she wanted without consequence. As a young child, she was kind and friendly, but as she grew older, her behavior and character began to deteriorate. If things didn't go her way, she would throw tantrums, lose her temper, and use bad language. She was prone to physical altercations and would often disregard others. Mackenzie only cared about her own opinions and desires, insisted on getting her way, and prioritized her own interests above all else. During his teenage years, Mackenzie became very difficult and unbearable personality, but her parents never thought it was out of the ordinary. To them, her behavior was a normal part of growing up and a phase she would eventually outgrow. They chose to respond with understanding and patience. However, Mackenzie's behavior worsened over time. In high school, she started using alcohol and occasionally experimenting with illicit drugs, often managing to avoid consequences for her actions. Her reckless behavior not only endangers herself but also the people around her. Mackenzie's parents seemed to be unaware of, or possibly chose to ignore, the obvious issues their daughter was facing. Like many teenagers, she was glued to her smartphone and frequently posted provocative photos and comments on social media. Her actions weren't unusual among her friends, as they often engaged in vandalism, fought, stole, and had run-ins with the police. However, they rarely faced serious consequences, typically receiving only warnings and educational discussions, which may have led them to believe that they could act as they pleased without facing repercussions. Dominic Russo, a young man from Strongsville, was a stark contrast to Mackenzie. Born in September 2001, he was the 4th of 7 children to Frank and Christine Russo. Growing up, Dominic was close to his 3 brothers and 3 sisters. He was an exemplary student, actively participated in sports, and prioritized a healthy lifestyle. Throughout his childhood, Dominic excelled academically, participated in sports, and prioritized a healthy lifestyle. Despite being part of a large family, Dominic and his siblings never lacked parental love, attention, or care. Frank and Christine Russo were moderately strict but also supportive of their children's interests. As a result, Dominic always had a lot of friends and was accustomed to being the center of attention. His attractive appearance and charming personality made him a popular figure, and he had many admirers from a young age. However, Dominic preferred to focus on meaningful relationships rather than fleeting romances. After completing high school, Dominic attended a local university, specializing in performing arts with a focus on music production. His ambition was to become a renowned music producer, and he was also a skilled singer-songwriter. By the time he was 20, Dominic had established his own business, purchased a car, and was living in a rented apartment in a good neighborhood. Additionally, he excelled as a student and athlete at the university. Dominic first met Mackenzie at a mutual friend's party. This chance encounter turned out to be pivotal for both of them. As complete opposites, they found themselves drawn to each other. Dominic, with his charming and cultured demeanor, quickly caught Mackenzie's eye. He was distinctly different from the people she normally socialized with, possessing qualities that set him apart. He was well-educated, well-mannered, and engaging, able to effortlessly converse on a wide range of topics. Mackenzie had a striking appearance and a slender figure that caught people's attention. She knew how to present herself and often relied on her charm to make an impression. Mackenzie quickly won over the guy she had been interested in, Dominic, and by fall 2021, they started dating. Not long after that, the two introduced each other to their families. While Mackenzie's parents were thrilled with her choice, considering the guy an excellent match for their daughter, Dominic's parents had mixed feelings about Mackenzie. They found her endearing and innocent at first, but there was something about her that immediately raised concerns for Frank and Christine Russo. Those close to Mackenzie believed she had truly fallen in love for the first time, and they hoped this relationship would have a positive impact on her life. Unfortunately, no one could have predicted the tragic endings that would eventually bring their romance to an end. As Mackenzie and Dominic spent more time together, they began to appear in public, holding hands and showing affection for each other. It wasn't long before the entire small town knew about their relationship. While some people who knew Mackenzie well felt sorry for her boyfriend, Dominic, most were simply happy for the couple. As time passed, Dominic started to notice strange behavior in Mackenzie. She was constantly defiant and tried to get everyone to do what she wanted. At first, Dominic thought her behavior was due to her youth and desire for attention. Despite her behavior, the couple made plans for their future, discussing marriage as soon as Mackenzie turned 18. They also hoped to leave their small town and move to a big city, such as New York, where Dominic could pursue a music career and showcase his talent. Over time, Mackenzie's behavior became increasingly alarming and sometimes frightening to Dominic. She asks him to do what she wants, and if he doesn't agree with her, she gets angry and acts very nasty. Dominic initially disregarded Mackenzie's controlling behavior as a joking matter, but then he soon realized her true nature. In public, she maintained a composed exterior, but when they were alone, she took out her anger on him and sometimes attacked him. Dominic felt he couldn't stand his girlfriend any longer and proposed a temporary separation to reconsider their feelings. However, Mackenzie responded by having a very breakdown in front of their mutual friends. She yelled, threatened to harm Dominic if he ended the relationship, and even threatened to burn down his house and wreck his car. These actions had the opposite effect of what Mackenzie intended. This makes Dominic even more want to end their toxic relationship. Mackenzie was determined to hold on to her boyfriend, refusing to acknowledge the end of the relationship. Initially, she acted as though nothing was wrong, continuing to call Dominic and invite him to various parties and events. She also posted affectionate photos of the two on social media, expressing her love for him. However, when Dominic made it clear that the relationship was over, Mackenzie's behavior changed. She became furious and began showing up at his house almost daily, standing under his window and shouting insults and threats. She also resorted to calling him from different phone numbers, leaving messages on his answering machine, and sending emails. In these messages, Mackenzie's tone was inconsistent. Sometimes she will gently express her feelings for him and offer to restart the relationship. However, there are times when she will use insults and threats against Dominic. Dominic was baffled by Mackenzie's behavior, having never experienced anything similar before. He struggled to respond and tried various approaches, including talking to her and ignoring her. He also documented her aggressive outbursts using his phone. The situation became unbearable as Mackenzie would publicly scream at and insult Dominic whenever she saw him, making his life extremely difficult. Despite this, Dominic held on to the hope that with time, Mackenzie would eventually leave him alone and move on. Mackenzie made a shocking statement in front of witnesses, saying it would be easier for her to kill Dominic than to let him move on from her. She threatened that if he didn't return to her, she would make sure no one else could have him. At first, Dominic didn't take her words seriously, but those around him knew she was not joking. Her threats also included hitting and running him over with a car, driving him off a cliff, or stopping on railroad tracks in front of an oncoming train. She described each scenario in detail, as if she had already planned it out. However, Mackenzie soon realized that her threats and insults only pushed Dominic further away. She decided to change her tactics, switching from being aggressive to being sweet and charming again. She stopped pressuring and harassing Dominic and pretended to have learned from her mistakes, wanting to change for the better. She started talking about college plans, asking for his help in choosing a university, and claiming that she had become more focused on her studies, particularly her upcoming final exams. Dominic was pleasantly surprised by the changes in Mackenzie and, still having feelings for her, he decided to help her with her university enrollment. As they started seeing each other again, they gradually rekindled their closeness. Dominic began taking her on dates and spending all his free time with her, thinking she had become more mature and responsible. He fell in love with her again without even realizing it, and their past issues seemed to fade away. This time, they kept their reunion private and didn't tell their friends and acquaintances about it. Therefore, their dates are private and discreet, allowing them to enjoy their time together without seeking outside attention. When Dominic's brother Angelo found out, he warned that nothing good would come of it. But Dominic didn't listen, because he loved her too much, so he didn't pay attention to his brother's words. Dominic thinks that Mackenzie has changed positively after they reunited, but he had no idea what she was really planning. Unbeknownst to him, Mackenzie had devised a sinister plan to exact revenge on he. She became obsessed with the idea of a disastrous car accident. She would spend her free time traveling around the city and looking for the perfect place to carry out her plan. Mackenzie considered crashing into a steep cliff or stepping in front of the train, but she couldn't find cliff nearby and thought the idea of blocking the train was untrustworthy. One day, while driving through an industrial area, she stumbled upon a secluded spot with no cameras or traffic. A massive brick wall caught her attention, and her twisted imagination quickly conjured up a new and equally horrific plan. She decided that accelerating to top speed and crashing into the wall would be just as spectacular as the other ideas she had considered. Initially, Mackenzie had planned to end her life alongside her lover, Dominic, intending for their tragic story to become a cautionary tale for the entire city. She had confided in her best friend about this plan, but her friend thought she was joking because she had had such wild ideas before. In late July 2022, just days before Mackenzie's 18th birthday, she asked Dominic if he wanted to attend a mutual friend's party with her. She told him that it would be the perfect opportunity for them to have some fun, relax, and make it clear to everyone that they were back together and deeply in love. Dominic quickly agreed, as he still trusted Mackenzie and didn't question her feelings or intentions. On the night of July 30th, Dominic and Mackenzie arriving at the party holding hands. Their entrance caught everyone's attention, and they looked happy and in love as they openly displayed their affection for each other. Their friends were genuinely thrilled to see them reunited but notice how well-suited the couple was. When night fell, Dominic and Mackenzie freely took photos, kissed and enjoyed their time together without any hesitation. However, no one had any idea that this joyful celebration would take a devastating turn. Dominic and Mackenzie drank some alcohol, like other people at that party, but Mackenzie secretly took a dose of illegal drugs, for courage, to not change her mind at the last minute and slammed on the brakes. The next morning, Dominic and Mackenzie bid farewell to the guests and began to head out to their car. However, they were approached by a friend of the guy, Davion Flanagan, who requested a ride home in their vehicle. Mackenzie tried to decline request, said that they had made other plans, but Dominic didn't see any problem with driving his friend home. Mackenzie eventually relented, and she agreed to give Davion a ride home. Mackenzie took the driver's seat, with Dominic beside her and Davion behind him. They left the party venue and headed onto the main road. Mackenzie drove cautiously, adhering to the speed limit and avoiding drawing attention to themselves. When they approached an empty intersection, she stopped at the red light. As they waited, Davion dozed off, allowing her to reconsider her intentions. In her later statement, Mackenzie claimed she had planned to die in an accident, but her words were discredited by the fact that she had buckled her seatbelt during the previous stop, while Davion remained unbuckled. As the light turned green, Mackenzie suddenly accelerated and took a sharp turn onto a poorly lit secondary road that led into an industrial area. Dominic and Davion seemed unaware of what was happening, and the car sped up as if Mackenzie had lost control. Pressing hard on the gas pedal, she careened the vehicle toward a brick wall. Luckily, a witness happened to be in the area. On an early Sunday morning, the industrial area was deserted, with no other people around to see the accident or offer assistance. However, a woman who lived near the scene heard the crash and went outside to find out what's happening. Seeing smoke and realizing a car had crashed, she quickly returned to her home to call for emergency help. About 30 minutes after the accident, medics arrived at the scene. Unfortunately, Davion and Dominic in the car succumbed to their injuries and died instantly. Mackenzie, however, was fortunate to have survived thanks to her seatbelt and airbags. Mackenzie, the driver, was unconscious and trapped in the wreckage with severe leg injuries, but she was breathing and had a palpable pulse, giving hope that she will survive. During the process of being freed from the car, Mackenzie briefly regained consciousness but she appeared disoriented and unaware of her surroundings. Once released from the vehicle, she was immediately rushed to the hospital for treatment. At the hospital, doctors diagnosed Mackenzie with multiple fractures and viscera injuries. Blood tests also revealed that she had been under the influence of both alcohol and drugs at the time of the accident. The police initially received leads and a confession in the investigation. After learning the results of Mackenzie's tests, it was thought that she was under the influence of addictive substances and didn't understand her actions. It's possible she tried to drive through the wall or didn't notice any obstacles, as there was no sign of braking. Since Mackenzie was unconscious in the intensive care unit after a complex operation, the police couldn't question her at first. When she regained consciousness, she became hysterical and confessed to the doctor, saying she deliberately crashed into the wall to kill Dominic and initially intended to die with him. Mackenzie also said that Dave was an unintended victim because he was hitchhiking in their car. Doctors dismissed Mackenzie's confession, believing it was a delusional state caused by anesthesia, painkillers, and grief over her boyfriend's death. However, when the police spoke with Mackenzie, her story changed completely. This time, Mackenzie said she remembered almost nothing about the incident of that night due to consuming alcohol and using illegal substances. Mackenzie claimed she had a memory lapse after getting in the car and had no idea how Davion ended up in the car. However, evidence contradicted this. Surveillance footage tracked the car's initial route and showed Mackenzie driving cautiously and following the rules until she suddenly turned onto a road leading to an industrial area. Furthermore, it was discovered that Mackenzie had previously driven the entire route days earlier, and her car had been spotted by multiple witnesses. After being discharged from the hospital, Mackenzie quickly recovered and attempted to resume her disinterested life. She showed no remorse for her actions and was confident about evading consequences. She became active on social media again, met with friends, and made future plans. By September, she even attended a concert in a nearby city, featuring her favorite band, seemed unaffected by her boyfriend's passing. Mackenzie lived an active life despite having her legs in a fragile state. She would often appear at concerts in a wheelchair, wearing vibrant makeup and taking selfies to share on social media. Just a month after recovering, Mackenzie attended a Halloween party in a pre-made costume where she met new people and enjoyed herself. However, her life has changed completely on November 4, 2022, when she was taken into custody. The investigation gathered enough evidence to bring the case to trial. Mackenzie was charged with premeditated aggravated double murder and possession of a controlled substance found in her pocket and detected in her blood. However, during the trial, Mackenzie changed her testimony multiple times. Initially, she claimed to have memory loss, but when her friend testified against her, revealing her plan, she shifted her defense. Mackenzie then claimed she had intended to die alongside her lover, but this was disproven when it was discovered she had secured herself with a seatbelt. Mackenzie Sherrill was found guilty of all charges on August 21, 2023. However, due to her age at the time of the crime, just 5 days shy of her 18th birthday, the court took this into consideration and tried her as a minor. Under state law, Mackenzie was eligible for consecutive 15-year prison sentences without parole for each murder she committed. However, due to her young age, the court decided to let her serve these sentences simultaneously. This meant she would be eligible for parole in 15 years. By that time, Mackenzie would be 33 years old. Both the prosecution and defense expressed displeasure with the court's decision. Dominic family members felt the sentence was too lenient, and they intended to appeal for a stricter punishment. On the other hand, Mackenzie's parents and lawyer believed the sentence was too harsh and decided to appeal as well. The judge refused to change the sentence, questioning whether Mackenzie would be released after 15 years in prison. In his opinion, Mackenzie showed no remorse for her actions and displayed arrogance towards the court. The extended prison term would provide her with ample time to reflect on the gravity of her crimes.